The card contained only 7 words. "Don't trust the woman standing beside you." Emily froze. The florist smiled politely, unaware that the blood had drained from her face. Her sister Claire stood only a few feet away, admiring the bouquet with watery eyes. "What does it say?" Claire asked. Emily folded the card before anyone else could see it. "Nothing," she whispered. But for the first time in 5 years, she wasn't sure whether her dead husband had left her one final gift, or one final warning. 5 years earlier, Emily Harper believed she had already lived through the worst day imaginable. Daniel had died instantly when a delivery truck crossed the center line on a rainy October morning. He was only 43. One phone call had shattered 20 years of marriage. People often said grief came in stages. Emily disagreed. Grief came in waves. Some days she laughed without guilt. Other days she couldn't bring herself to wash Daniel's favorite coffee mug, because it still sat exactly where he'd left it. Daniel had always been the planner. Birthdays, vacations, Christmas presents, even grocery lists were color-coded. Emily used to tease him that if he could schedule sunshine, he probably would. She had no idea just how far that habit went. 2 weeks after the funeral, a delivery arrived. 12 white lilies. Her favorite. The attached note simply read, "1 year down. Keep living. Daniel." Emily thought it had been sent by mistake, until the florist explained. "Your husband prepaid for 6 annual deliveries before he passed." Emily cried harder that day than she had at the funeral, because somehow Daniel had still managed to comfort her. Every October, the flowers arrived, always different. Lilies, peonies, white roses, sunflowers one year because he used to say she smiled more in autumn than summer. Every bouquet carried a handwritten note prepared years in advance. Some were funny. "Remember when you almost burned the kitchen making pancakes?" Others were gentle. "You deserve happiness, even if it scares you." Emily never missed opening them alone. It became a ritual, a conversation with someone who no longer existed. Her friends worried the flowers kept her trapped in the past. Emily believed they helped her move forward. Neither side was entirely right. Life had changed in quiet ways. At 47, Emily worked as a librarian in a small Connecticut town, where nearly everyone knew everyone else's business. She lived in the same blue colonial house she'd shared with Daniel. She painted the kitchen, adopted an older golden retriever named Murphy, started gardening, stopped wearing her wedding ring after 3 years, not because she loved Daniel less, but because carrying him in her heart no longer required carrying gold on her finger. Her younger sister Claire visited almost every weekend. Claire had her own scars, a painful divorce, 2 bankrupt businesses, a habit of pretending everything was fine while quietly falling apart. Emily admired her resilience. But Claire had one weakness she could never overcome: money. She borrowed often, repaid rarely, always promising the next opportunity would change everything. Emily never kept track. Daniel probably would have. Emily simply couldn't say no. There was another person who remained strangely close after Daniel's death. Michael Brooks, Daniel's oldest friend. They'd met in college, started a landscaping business together. Michael eventually sold his share, while Daniel pursued commercial construction. The friendship survived careers, marriages, and decades. After the funeral, Michael checked in every few months, fixed broken fences, replaced smoke detector batteries, helped shovel snow, never overstayed, never crossed a line. Emily appreciated that. Others didn't. The neighbors whispered, a widowed woman, a loyal family friend. It made for easy gossip. Emily ignored it. Michael seemed to do the same. Still, There were moments when Emily caught him looking at old photographs, with an expression she couldn't quite understand. Regret, longing, guilt. Whenever she noticed, he'd quickly change the subject. By the 5th anniversary of Daniel's death, life had settled into something almost peaceful. Not happy, not sad. Simply manageable. Emily prepared herself for the annual delivery the way some people prepared for holidays. She cleaned the dining room table, found the crystal vase Daniel always preferred, made tea, turned off her phone. She wanted those few minutes alone. Instead, Claire arrived unexpectedly carrying a homemade apple pie. "I thought you shouldn't be alone today." Emily smiled. "Thank you." Minutes later, the florist knocked. The bouquet was breathtaking. Cream-colored roses surrounded by deep blue hydrangeas. Daniel knew those were her favorites, because blue reminded her of the ocean where they spent their honeymoon. Emily smiled through tears, until she opened the envelope. Every previous note had begun with affection. Dear Em, my favorite girl. If you're reading this. This one didn't. Instead it read, "Don't trust the woman standing beside you. No signature. No explanation. Nothing else." Emily's heartbeat echoed in her ears. Standing beside her. Claire stood beside her. Exactly beside her. Was that what Daniel meant? Or had someone else written the card? She looked at her sister. Claire seemed perfectly normal, concerned, patient, completely unaware. Emily slipped the note into her pocket. "What did he write this year?" Claire asked softly. Emily forced herself to smile. "He said he hoped I was okay." Claire hugged her tightly, too tightly. For a split second, Emily noticed something unusual. Claire's eyes weren't on Emily. They were fixed on the envelope, almost checking whether the card was still inside. The thought vanished as quickly as it came. She immediately hated herself for even noticing. Grief could make people imagine things, couldn't it? That evening, Emily couldn't stop rereading the message. She compared the handwriting to every previous card. It looked identical. Every curve, every capital letter, every tiny flourish on the letter D. If someone had forged it, they'd done an impossible job. She pulled out the old keepsake box where she'd stored every bouquet card. 5 years. 5 loving messages. Then, this. What had changed? Had Daniel discovered something before he died? Had he hidden another letter somewhere? Or was this some cruel prank? Murphy barked suddenly at the front window. Emily looked outside. A dark sedan was parked across the street. Its headlights were off. Someone was sitting inside, watching the house. She stepped closer to the glass. The engine started immediately. The car pulled away before she could read the license plate. A coincidence. It had to be. Yet her pulse refused to slow. She locked the front door, then the back, checked every window, and for the first time since Daniel's funeral, Emily felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Not grief, not loneliness, fear. She reached into the keepsake box to put away the newest card. That's when she noticed something impossible. The bottom of the wooden box wasn't flat anymore. One corner lifted slightly, as though there was another compartment underneath. Emily stared at it without touching it, because she suddenly remembered something Daniel had once said while building the box himself. Everyone thinks they know where the secrets are. At the time, she'd laughed. Now, she wasn't laughing anymore. Emily stared at the raised corner of the wooden keepsake box, her fingertips hovering just above it. For 5 years, she had opened that box only to place another card inside. She had dusted it, moved it from shelf to shelf during spring cleaning, and even polished the walnut finish every Christmas. Yet she had never noticed that the bottom wasn't completely solid. Her heart pounded. Daniel had made the box himself during one rainy weekend in their garage. She remembered laughing as he refused to let her peek until it was finished. "Every good keepsake box needs one secret," he had joked. At the time, she thought he meant the memories hidden inside. Now she wasn't so sure. Taking a deep breath, Emily slid her fingernail beneath the loose corner. The panel lifted effortlessly. Beneath it lay a small envelope sealed with dark blue wax. Her hands began to shake before she even touched it. Across the front, in Daniel's unmistakable handwriting, were 4 simple words. Only if necessary. Emily's throat tightened. He had never told her about this. Why would he hide a letter inside a box that he knew she might never discover? She carefully broke the seal. Inside was a folded sheet of paper. Only 3 sentences had been written. "If you found this, something has gone wrong. Don't accuse anyone until you know the truth. Start with the storage unit. Nothing else. No address. No explanation. No key. Just those 3 cryptic sentences." Emily read them again and again, hoping more words would somehow appear. Instead, she found herself asking a dozen new questions. What storage unit? Why had Daniel hidden this instead of telling her directly? And most importantly, what had gone wrong? Sleep never came that night. Every time Emily closed her eyes, the message replayed in her mind. Don't trust the woman standing beside you. Then, don't accuse anyone until you know the truth. The 2 notes almost contradicted each other. One warned her, the other urged caution. Daniel had always hated assumptions. Whenever friends argued, he would always say the same thing. Facts first, feelings second. Emily repeated those words to herself until sunrise. The next morning she drove to the florist. Margaret Ellis had owned Harper's Flowers for nearly 30 years. She had personally arranged every bouquet Daniel had ordered. When Emily entered, Margaret greeted her warmly. "I wondered if you'd stop by." Emily frowned. "You did." Margaret nodded. "Your husband always said that one day you might have questions." Emily's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Margaret disappeared into the back office and returned carrying a thick binder. She placed it gently on the counter. Daniel prepaid everything 6 months before his accident. Emily blinked. 6 months? Every bouquet, every delivery date, every handwritten note. Margaret opened the binder. Each year's order was neatly organized. Flower types, delivery addresses, payment receipts, copies of every card. Emily flipped directly to this year's order. The bouquet matched perfectly. Cream roses, blue hydrangeas. Delivery confirmed. But when she reached the card, she froze. The copy in Margaret's binder didn't match the card in Emily's pocket. Instead, it read, "Some wounds finally become scars. I hope you've started smiling again. Love always, Daniel." Emily's stomach dropped. "That's not what I received." Margaret looked confused. "What do you mean?" Emily removed yesterday's card from her purse. Margaret compared them side by side. Her smile disappeared. "I've never seen this before. The handwriting? It looks identical." "It is." Margaret shook her head slowly. "I personally placed the original card inside the envelope yesterday morning." "So, someone switched it?" Margaret hesitated. "Only one person handled the bouquet after me." "Who?" "Our delivery driver. His name was Ethan Morales, 23, working part-time while finishing college." Margaret immediately called him. He arrived 20 minutes later, looking genuinely confused. Emily watched every expression on his face. There was nervousness, embarrassment, but not deception. "I never opened the envelope," Ethan insisted. "I picked up the bouquet, drove straight to your house, handed it to you, and left." "Did anyone stop you?" "No." "Did you leave the van unattended?" He hesitated. "Just for a minute." Emily leaned forward. "When?" "I stopped for coffee." "How long?" "Maybe 3 minutes." Margaret frowned. "You left prepaid customer deliveries unlocked?" "I've done it before." Emily felt irritation rise. 3 minutes. That was enough. Enough for someone to open the van. Enough to replace a single envelope. Enough to disappear unnoticed. But who would know exactly which bouquet belonged to her? Driving home, Emily couldn't shake another memory loose. 3 weeks earlier, Claire had asked an unusual question. "So, when do Daniel's flowers usually arrive?" Usually. At the time, Emily hadn't thought anything of it. Now the conversation sounded different. Too specific. Too casual. Emily hated where her thoughts were leading. Claire wasn't perfect. She borrowed money. She kept financial problems secret until they became disasters. But she wasn't cruel. Was she? Emily gripped the steering wheel tighter. Daniel's second note echoed again. "Don't accuse anyone until you know the truth." That afternoon, Michael stopped by unexpectedly carrying groceries. "I figured you probably forgot to shop." Emily forced a smile. "You know me too well." He noticed immediately that something was wrong. What happened? Emily almost told him everything. Almost. Instead, she simply said, "I'm trying to understand something Daniel left behind." Michael became unusually quiet. "What kind of something?" "A letter." His face changed so quickly Emily nearly missed it. Only half a second. A flash of recognition. Fear. Then it vanished. "What did it say?" She watched him carefully. "Nothing important." Michael nodded. Too quickly. "If you ever need help, you know where to find me." As he turned toward the front door, something slipped from his jacket pocket. A brass key. Emily picked it up before he noticed. A small metal tag hung from it. Unit 214, storage unit. Emily's pulse thundered. "Michael." He turned. "You dropped this." For a fraction of a second, his expression froze. He walked back slowly. "Oh." He took the key. "I've been cleaning out an old storage locker." Emily forced herself to sound casual. "Really?" "Just old business records." "What facility?" He smiled politely. "I can't even remember the name." That answer bothered her immediately. Michael remembered everything. Anniversaries, license plates, the score of baseball games from 20 years ago. He didn't forget details, especially not ones involving property he still rented. When he finally left, Emily stood at the window watching him drive away. Instead of turning toward town, he drove in the opposite direction, toward the industrial district, where most of the city's storage facilities were located. By evening, Emily had reached one conclusion. Someone was lying. But she still didn't know who. Claire had acted strangely around the card. Michael possessed a storage unit key. Someone had replaced Daniel's original message, and a mysterious car had watched her house the previous night. Each clue pointed in a different direction. None of them fit together. She opened her laptop and searched local storage facilities. It took less than 10 minutes. There were only 4 companies nearby. One of them listed unit numbers beginning with 200. She wrote down the address. Tomorrow, she decided, she would go there herself, without telling Claire, without telling Michael, without telling anyone. As she closed the laptop, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She almost ignored it. Instead, she answered. Silence. Then a man's voice, barely above a whisper. "If you're looking for Unit 214... Emily's blood ran cold. "Don't let Michael know." The call disconnected. Emily stared at the screen. No caller ID. No number. Only the duration. 11 seconds. She looked toward the dark window. This time, another car was parked across the street. Its engine was already running. And before Emily could step outside, it slowly drove away once again. Emily didn't wait for sunrise. By 6:15 a.m., she was already parked outside the storage facility on the edge of town, her hands wrapped tightly around a paper cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Unit 214 stood halfway down a quiet row of gray metal doors, lit only by the pale morning sun. She had expected to find a heavy padlock. Instead, the unit was already unlocked. Her pulse quickened. Someone had been here before her. She hesitated only a moment before pulling the door upward. It rattled loudly through the empty complex. Inside, there were no stacks of money, no hidden jewelry, no evidence of a double life. Just ordinary things. Old camping equipment, boxes labeled college, a wooden rocking horse, 3 photo albums, and a large steel filing cabinet. Everything was covered with a thin layer of dust, except the cabinet. Someone had opened it recently. Emily stepped closer. The top drawer contained folders neatly labeled by year. The second drawer held insurance documents. The third drawer stopped her cold. A single white envelope rested inside. Across the front, Daniel had written, "For Emily, when someone changes my message." Emily's knees nearly gave out. He had expected this, years before he died. With trembling hands, she unfolded the letter. "My love, if you're reading this, then someone interfered with the flowers. If that happened, it means the person I'm worried about finally made a move." Emily struggled to breathe. "Before you panic, remember what I always told you. The first person you suspect is usually the wrong one." She immediately thought of Claire, then Michael, exactly as Daniel had predicted. "Please don't blame Claire." Emily stared at the sentence. Tears welled in her eyes. Claire. He knew she would become suspicious. She has made mistakes. She hides debt because she's ashamed, not because she's dangerous. If she borrowed money again, forgive her before you judge her. Emily lowered the page. The guilt hit her instantly. She had spent an entire day wondering if her own sister had betrayed her. Daniel had seen that possibility years ago. How? She continued reading. "And don't blame Michael either." Emily's breath caught. "He's been protecting something I asked him to protect." The storage unit, the key, the lies. None of them meant what she had believed. "If you're standing in this unit," he kept his promise. Emily closed her eyes. Every suspicious glance, every awkward conversation, every evasive answer. Michael hadn't been hiding the truth from her. He had been protecting Daniel's instructions. Then who had changed the card? She kept reading. There's only one person left. The final page contained a single name, Richard Lawson. Emily frowned. The name meant nothing until she reached the next paragraph. The truck driver who caused my accident wasn't drunk. Everything inside her stopped. The police never looked deeper because it appeared to be a tragic mistake. It wasn't. Daniel explained that 3 weeks before his death, he had discovered serious accounting fraud inside one of the construction companies he consulted for. Millions of dollars had disappeared through fake contracts. The company's financial director, Richard Lawson, had quietly warned Daniel to stop asking questions. Daniel refused. He gathered copies of every document and hid them inside Unit 214. Emily's hands began to shake uncontrollably. Daniel hadn't died because of bad weather. He had believed someone wanted him silenced. The evidence remained in the cabinet before her. Hard drives, bank statements, signed contracts, everything meticulously organized. Daniel had anticipated one final possibility. If nothing ever happened, Michael was instructed to destroy these after 10 years. But if someone tampered with my messages, take everything directly to Detective Sarah Mills. A business card fell from the envelope. The detective's handwritten note on the back simply read, "If Emily arrives, believe her." Emily barely had time to process what she had read before she heard footsteps outside. Someone else had entered the storage facility. Heavy, deliberate. She quietly closed the cabinet. The footsteps stopped outside Unit 214. A familiar voice called softly. "Emily." "Michael." She stepped into the doorway. He looked exhausted. "I was hoping I'd find you before anyone else. You knew. I knew there was a letter. You lied. I promised Daniel I would." Emily stared at him. "For 5 years?" Michael nodded. "He made me swear." "Why?" "Because he knew you'd come looking only if something was truly wrong." Emily searched his face. There was no deception anymore, only relief. "He trusted you that much?" Michael smiled sadly. "He trusted you more." Michael explained everything. 3 weeks before the accident, Daniel had become convinced someone was watching him. He never claimed anyone wanted to kill him, only that if anything unexpected happened, Emily needed protection before answers. The annual flowers weren't simply romantic gestures. They were also a test. If every bouquet arrived untouched, Daniel's suspicions had probably died with him. If one message was ever replaced, it meant someone had finally started searching for whatever Daniel had hidden. "The fake warning," Michael said quietly, "was meant to make you suspect Claire." Emily nodded slowly. "And maybe you?" Michael laughed bitterly. "I assumed I'd be next." That afternoon they met Detective Sarah Mills. She had retired 2 years earlier. Yet the moment Emily placed Daniel's letter on her kitchen table, Sarah's expression changed. "I hoped this day would never come." "You knew?" Sarah nodded. "Daniel visited me 4 days before he died. He said if he disappeared, it would probably look accidental." Emily felt tears fill her eyes. "Why didn't you investigate?" "I tried." She opened an old file. The evidence wasn't enough. "But this," she looked toward the storage box Michael carried, "changes everything." 6 months later, federal investigators arrested Richard Lawson. The financial fraud stretched across 3 states. Several executives were charged with conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction of justice. Although investigators could never legally prove Daniel's death had been ordered, they established that critical evidence had been deliberately concealed after the crash. The official case was reopened. For Emily, that mattered more than a conviction. Daniel had not been paranoid. He had been telling the truth. Claire cried when Emily apologized. "I thought you stopped trusting me." Emily hugged her tightly. "I almost did." Claire admitted she had borrowed money again and hidden it out of embarrassment. "I didn't want you to think I was a failure." Emily smiled through tears. "We've both been hiding things." For the first time in years, neither of them had to anymore. The following October, another delivery arrived. Emily hadn't expected one. Daniel had only prepaid 6 bouquets. Margaret smiled as she handed over a simple arrangement of wildflowers. "No card this time," she said. "I sent these." Emily looked surprised. You did? Margaret nodded. I thought someone should keep the tradition alive. Emily smiled. No. She gently accepted the flowers. The tradition isn't the bouquet. It's remembering the people who loved us enough to leave kindness behind. She carried the flowers inside and placed them beside Daniel's photograph. For the first time since his death. She didn't ask herself what he would have wanted. She already knew. He hadn't spent years planning flowers because he wanted her to remain in the past. He had planned them so she would survive long enough to reach the future. Emily opened the curtains. Morning sunlight filled the house. The fear was finally gone. In its place remained something quieter. Gratitude. Because Daniel's final gift had never been the flowers. It had been trust. Trust that one day, even after unimaginable loss, she would find the courage to uncover the truth instead of living in fear. And as she smiled toward the empty chair across the table, she could almost hear his familiar voice one last time. Facts first. Feelings second. This time she smiled back. Thank you, she whispered. I finally understand. Love isn't measured by how long someone stays beside us. Sometimes it's measured by the care they take to protect us, long after they're gone. Grief can cloud our judgment. Fear can point us toward the wrong people. But truth, when pursued with patience and compassion, has a way of setting every heart free. If you received a mysterious message from someone you loved and lost, would you trust it immediately? Or would you question everything? Who would you have suspected first in Emily's place? And do you think you could have forgiven yourself after learning the truth?